everybody and welcome to Flock Talk. Today we're going to go over how to teach your bird to ring a bell to let you know when it wants to be let out of the cage. Now before I get into this, I do want to talk a little bit about why you would actually want to train this behavior. The main function for ringing this bell, although it is cute and a little bit funny, is actually to resolve attention screaming. Now attention screaming is as obvious as it sounds, whenever a bird screams to get your attention. And this is a really easy thing to end up reinforcing with birds. Something as simple as making a noise in another room while they're screaming can tell them, hey, when I scream, this human might be showing up. And that's all it takes to make them reinforce this behavior, and it can end up getting pretty gnarly sometimes. So this is a really simple way to have an alternative to that behavior. Now the important thing about attention screaming is that it's being reinforced by you showing up and that they need to have a way to communicate with you that they want you to come in here. You can't just get rid of the behavior and not give them a way to ask you to come in and help them out. The most important thing about this is that the reinforcer is you coming in the room. That is extremely important. We can't be training this trick and reinforcing it solely with treats the entire time, because then the bird isn't learning to ring the bell when it wants you, it's learning to ring the bell when it wants food. So the easiest way to do this is to start training the concept with food and then slowly easing it out and incorporating it into everyday life. And it doesn't matter if your bird doesn't like touching bells, it doesn't matter if they've never seen a bell before in their lives. We go over how to introduce birds to touching bells and how to get them to ring it all throughout this video. It's extremely simple. Me and ZB here did it in 2 sessions, I think it was. And so it's incredibly easy, incredibly simple, and it can solve all of those headaches of listening to birds scream non-stop because they've learned that screaming makes you come in. So ringing a bell is a really easy way to do it. And ringing a bell also is not the only thing you can reinforce. If you have a bird's attention screaming and maybe they get aggressive with bells and you don't want to have them in their environment, you can train any other behavior you want in there. It could be waving, it could be banging their beaks on the bars. If you were really technologically advanced, you could put a button in their cage and get that to like send a notification to your phone, I'm sure. It's extremely easy to train almost any behavior to replace attention screaming. So without any further ado, let's get into it.
Alright, so this process is actually pretty simple. All we're starting off doing here is slowly luring ZB towards the bell. A lot of birds won't want to touch them right off the bat, so I'm just going to use my hand to kind of turn her head towards the bell and get her closer to touching it and grabbing it. Whenever she does touch it or gets closer to it, I'm going to reward her with a bit of a treat. And the longer we go along this, the more I'm going to reward her for touching it. And you can see she catches on pretty quick. She's just going to grab the bell, and that's all she's going to get rewarded for right now. If she happens to shake it, she'll get a jackpot reward for that, because that is one step closer to actually being able to ring the bell herself. As we go along here, you'll see her start to get a little bit more aware of what concept I'm asking her to do. You see she goes straight for the bell instead of reaching for my hand. She's no longer really being lured, she's just understanding that the bell is what's earning her the treat, not just following my hand. Next, what you'll see is I'm not rewarding her unless she actually manages to move the bell in a way that is going to yield a sound. It doesn't necessarily need to make a sound at this point, but we just need to be one step closer towards actually being able to make that sound. So for right now, I'm just rewarding her anytime she kind of shakes the bell or pulls it a little bit more aggressively. Once she understands that, you can see she's shaking the bell every time she grabs it. I'm going to start only rewarding when she starts to actually make a noise. It doesn't have to be a particularly loud noise, doesn't have to be a perfect bell ring, it just has to be any sort of little ding. And it'll take a little while for her to realize that this is what's earning the reward, but very quickly they catch on and realize that the sound of the bell is now what's yielding the reward, not just grabbing it and not just shaking it. As the birds catch on to this concept, we're going to have to start applying this more to its actual use. So now we're starting our second session here. We did this in 2 separate sessions of the same day. So we're just going to warm up again. We're just going to reintroduce you to the concept of ringing the bell. And we're going to ask for the very basics, just touching it and then just ringing it and just kind of refreshing her memory since the last training session. It's very possible she could have forgotten some things. And you just need to jog her memory again. But once she's caught on to that and she's back up to par with where we left off in the previous session, what we're going to do is start applying this to the real life situation. Since the function of this is to get her to be able to tell me when she wants to be let out to get rid of attention screaming, we need to start actually using it in that sort of context. Since the reward for attention screaming is a person coming in or the cage door being opened, that's what we need to change the reward to be. So what I've done here is I have moved the bell into the cage and very slowly started closing the door and keying her towards it, and you can see she very quickly catches on, and I no longer need to use my hand to show her how to ring the bell. And through this process of very gradually closing the door and putting her in the cage to ring the bell, she's not only associating ringing the bell with me giving her a treat, but she's now starting to associate it with me opening the door. And as you can see here, I've started putting her elsewhere in the cage. I've put her on different perches, I've put her all the way on the other side, and she's walking herself over to that perch to ring the bell to get the door open, as well as earning the treat. And this trick at this point is basically done. The only thing we're going to start doing is getting rid of that treat. Since she's now understanding that ringing the bell makes the door open and makes me hand her something, what we're going to start doing is apply this anytime she's in the cage. So if I'm putting her in there to eat a meal, I'm going to close the door and I'm just going to wait for her to finish eating. And then I'm going to wait for her to ring the bell before I go and let her out. And doing this applies it to real life situations, so that she starts to understand, hey, if I want my door open and I want someone to come get me, all I have to do is ring this bell. And as you can see, this bit of footage right here was actually me putting her in to eat a meal. And she goes right in, she takes a little nibble, and she very quickly walks on over and rings the bell to get let out. And what I'm going to start doing now is I am not going to hand her treats after this point. The reinforcer is going to be me talking to her and interacting with her and the cage door opening. And what's happening here is now, instead of her just randomly ringing the bell in an attempt to earn a treat, she's gonna only ring that bell when she wants to be let out of her cage, because that's what gets reinforced. If every time she rings that bell she earns a treat, she's just gonna do it anytime she actually, wants food. If she doesn't want food, then she's not gonna ring the bell. But the thing is, we don't want her to be ringing it whenever she wants food. We want her to be ringing it whenever she wants to be let out of the cage. So we're gonna stop giving her food and start reinforcing her with being let out of the cage. Now, what can happen sometimes with this is birds can regress a little bit. They can not quite understand what this reinforcer is, and when that happens, you might go in, give them a lot of verbal praise, and then give them a small treat and slowly decrease how much of a treat you're giving them. But that is basically the entire process.
Alright, so that about does it for this video. I hope you found it helpful and it was clear to understand. If you have any difficulties or any questions, please feel free to let me know. Give me 1 second, there's a bird ringing to let them out of their cage. Hi, sweetie. You're such a good girl. Here you go, real life application of the concept. This is 2 days later after filming that footage. Anyways, so I hope this video was clear to understand. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, and things like that, don't hesitate to leave a comment or send me a message down below, and I'll get to them as soon as possible. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!